So glad to be speaking to you guys tonight. So it's June 23rd and June 22nd, yesterday, is 3 years since I stopped playing games. To be accurate, it's 3 years since I recovered from my relapse. I had relapsed for a couple months, and prior to that, I had 4.5 years. Emphasizes to me how important it is to maintain, not to get too self-assured, because while we might not have as long a history as AA or some other programs, I know for myself that you don't just get cured. You got to keep working at it. I started out as a kid. I'm number six of eight, and religious Jewish family. And we actually lived out of town. I didn't have any of my friends nearby. I went to school out of town, so I never had any friends to go to or hang out with or would come to me. And I had my siblings, but that many people around, and we had enough dysfunction in the family that games, when they came around, were amazing. They were a blessing to me. We didn't have a console because my parents weren't getting us things like that, and we didn't have a TV. I never watched TV. It's not, in my culture, it's not really accepted to be open about or openly watching TV or movies, and games are for kids. It's not an accepted thing that you can be playing games or movie-like games. So my father gave us his desktop when he finished with it. When he updated, he got a new one. He'd give it to us younger four. We'd play educational games, and eventually we got other RTS games. I remember getting one as a prize from my older brother, and I think most of the others were from I bought it myself or pirated copies. It just fit like a glove. I was right in there, and come home, go straight on it. Didn't have a really good time in school. I mean, I loved learning, but I didn't fit with the other kids. I changed schools, and I never felt like I belonged. I had a very hard time making friends because I never felt comfortable in my own skin. Always felt apart. Um, and interesting, I'm noticing now that that's even amongst my siblings. So, but I never thought of gaming as anything other than my favorite toy. My brother and I, my younger brother, we would have turns, quote unquote, on the computer, which we would fight about, and as boys do, nothing felt out of the ordinary. Eventually, I went away when I was 13, asked my parents I wanted to go away to school because I felt an out of town school, the one I chose, would be more appropriate for me, and in that environment I would succeed. So I went away to high school a year early. I went to Israel, and it was a completely different environment for me, and I was completely out of sorts. And then I'm finding a way to play there as well, and I didn't make very good friends there either, and I didn't fit in there either. And so the next year I went to a different high school, and there again I found a way. This time I was manipulating a family that I knew that lived in that town to let me use the computer, and I always had some explanation how it was good for my psyche and I needed to relax and it was important and whatever the reason. The next year I went to a different school because I wasn't making friends and I wasn't succeeding, but I knew the next school would do it. And their friends had Game Boys, or I don't know what, PSP, I don't know what was around then, but I would borrow and then use without permission and miss classes. Um, and I made a few friends and I started succeeding. Something kind of worked for me, and I was there for 2 years. I made a lot of strides and had some really good teachers. So most of my growth was that year, was those 2 years. But it became quite apparent. And I remember people commenting to me, you got to cut down a little bit on the game time. I mean, we have to get to class after all. Never noticed it as a problem. Um, this pattern continued. I went the next year for college level was yeshiva. I went to one place that I thought, this is really going to change my life. I'm really going to be the person who I want to be. This was the elite school that I always wanted to get to. I went to a school that I was sure would get me to where I wanted to get to. I felt a lot of pressure from myself. I don't know necessarily that it was from without, it probably was, but I felt a great need of achieving a certain standard because I wanted to get somewhere, and I didn't feel comfortable where I was. And there I bought Game Boy, and somebody had a PSP, and I would use that. And I remember stealing from a store to get it. And I used to have, there was like an exchange used game store that I would keep exchanging. And there it really came to a head where I at some point just quit going to class at all. I was just constantly playing, staying in the bathroom all night. I ended up getting kicked out towards the end of the year, and my mother managed to get me back in to school. So I came back, and the next year I went to a different school because that one would really change everything. And I went there. When I went there, by the way, in all these schools, the first month was perfect. It was exactly the way I wanted it to be because I was putting in my full effort and I was there. And then it just didn't continue that way. In this place, I found a way. My brother had access to a hallway that had a key that only he had, and then in the hallway was an office, unused, that he only had. Nobody used that area of the school, and I just wanted to go there sometimes. I would just go there, and I found in the closet a complete Windows 98 and unused. So I set it up, and I had it, no internet connection. Got myself Age of Empires 2, and I remember thinking, 2007. I remember thinking, this game is just perfect. That's all I ever need. That's all I ever need. This game, I'll be perfect for that's it. I don't have to advance past this one. Which of course didn't end up staying true for me, but my schedule was wake up 2 in the afternoon, grab something from the lunchroom, go down to the secret hall and make sure I wasn't followed, and then emerge 6 in the morning, and then go to sleep in my bed. People thought I left town. They didn't realize I was still in the building because it just went on month after month. End of the year, I went to a different school because that one was, more catered to, people with learning difficulties, and they would help me. When I went there, succeeded the first month, amazing. Eventually bought myself a laptop, stowed it in a synagogue that was 40 blocks away, and I would bike there every afternoon when I woke up. I would bike back every morning and be in bed before everyone would wake up. That was my daily schedule. I would be there, and I actually had a little side. I was like tutoring part-time, so I had some money and I started buying a bunch of games. At some point, the principal called me in and he said, listen, we would kick you out, but there's no point because I don't know what you're doing, but you're not here. Now, you're using your parents' tuition money. I don't know if you tell them what you're doing or not, but whenever you want to go, just go. And if you don't want to go, I don't really care either. I don't even know that you're here. So I'm just letting you know what my stance is. That didn't make one difference to me. It was terrifying being called in, but it had taken some time to pin me down where I was. But he, found me when I went to grab some food. The next year, all my friends went for volunteer work to different high schools. I was obviously not selected, but I went to my hometown and where some of my friends were going to volunteer, and I said, yeah, I'm doing this. And in my mind, I really was. I really thought I was going there to do that kind of work with them, for the high school, to do programming, with the students. I ended up not having a space in the dorm, but I would live at home and commute, get a ride. That ended pretty quickly. My parents gave me upstairs bedroom to live in, but I wanted to live in the basement, where it was harder for them to get to me. Eventually, my brother gave me the Wi-Fi passwords my parents wouldn't give me. I discovered Pirate Bay that you could download games, pirated games, and a single player. Nirvana. I had my laptop. I had free room and board. My parents quickly grew tired of telling me what to do because it was useless, and I had no responsibilities. Nothing to tell me what to do. I played full time. I remember going through long stretches of game where I wasn't sure if I was dreaming or awake because I'd been fighting sleep for so many hours, and I eventually fell asleep. And when I woke up, I wasn't sure had I beaten that level or not because I've tried so many times now. I don't remember if the last few attempts were real or a dream. And sometimes they were a dream. At this point, I was living as an animal. Wouldn't get dressed, stayed in pajamas, avoided going to the bathroom till the very last second. I'd have these, I never had this before where I had full, complete, unrestricted access. This went on for a while. While I was going away, when I was in dormitories, when I was 13, I went to Israel. Whenever I came home for holiday breaks, I would dive on the computer. I would lock myself on it. I mean, it wasn't in a separate room, but I was glued on there for every possible second that I could. And I would continue fighting with my brother for it as well. My family got used to it, and it was the constant thing that, oh, you're on the computer, and they would hate it, and they would try to talk me out of it, and they would try to explain. It never really gave me any remorse, just a lot of anger towards them. They didn't understand how important this was. So eventually, down there in that basement, I mean, I went through so many games. I went through all the old games. I went through every single game. And the way I played games during that entire period was, well, at some point, because remember, as a kid, I just was playing for fun, or so I think I remember. But at some point, I wasn't interested in I would squeeze out every single bit of fun and then some and just continue to play. And I just wanted to be there. I wasn't a completionist. I wasn't good at the games. I just wanted to be in the game. I would try to squeeze out every single last ounce of enjoyment, like chewing gum, way past till you really couldn't anymore, till it was horrible, until you really were like, I'm gonna take this out of my mouth. It's just horrible. As soon as I find a new piece of gum to put in, I loved the game and hated myself. And then one day, just a regular day, it's a regular day. I was in the basement, always laying in bed with the laptop on my stomach, and just go like a couple inches away from my eyes, and just in my catatonic state, felt almost like a presence or a voice telling me, "Get out, get out, get out." I needed to get out, and I did. I got up, I got dressed, got on my bike, and I just got out. I didn't know where I was going to go. I just started biking. I ended up going to a park overlooking a river, and sat down under a tree. There's people walking, biking, rollerblading. I just sat down under the tree and I just started crying, tears, sobbing and crying. And I had no idea what I was crying about. I was just looking around, and I was just in so much shock and pain. I didn't have coherent thoughts, just a ton of feelings. Finally, I remember saying, God is the ultimate graphic artist. I so much want to be in the game, but I want to be here. And I don't know how to do that. The only thing I knew about addiction, my older brother around this time had suggested gently, maybe you're addicted to games, and I totally, rejected it. I'm like, you don't even understand. You don't get it. The only thing I knew about addiction was that there's a doctor, Abe Tversky in Pittsburgh, and he had addiction clinic. I got home. I Googled Dr. Tversky's number, and I called him. I'm addicted to games. I must speak to, I'm sorry, no, I just said I must speak to doctor right now. And they put me through, incredibly. And he picked up and he said, hello? I said, Dr. Tversky, I'm addicted to games. What should I do? And he said, go to AA. I said, I am not an alcoholic. He said, go to AA, go to an open meeting, translate in your head. I said, thank you. I found a meeting, got on my bike, and biked 40 blocks. So I used to bike 40 blocks every day to where my laptop was being held when I had stashed in a synagogue. And now I biked 40 blocks twice a day to the meeting. And my first experience going in there was overwhelming. I couldn't believe the openness and honesty and what I now can describe as serenity. We're calm people, so many various different kinds of people, and they were all strangers and yet complete comrades with each other. I came with an open mind, and I was so taken by how this all worked. I remember people saying sobriety time, and I was like, wow, that guy can do 6 months, that guy could do 5 years, and this one could do 20 years, and this one could do 10 days. I could do 24 hours. In fact, I'm sure someone must have asked me, can you do 24 hours? But I don't remember that. But I remember coming home and saying, I'm going to do 24 hours. I can do that, right? I went to my older brother who had mentioned that maybe I'm addicted, and I gave him my laptop and I said, can you hold this for 24 hours for me? And he said, sure. So 25 hours later, I was beating on his door. I needed that laptop back. It was complete hell for me. I got back my computer and went back to gaming, but I continued going to meetings for 2 months. At the end of 2 months, it was June 8th. I was ready. I heard so much about relapses, and I just didn't want to do that. I didn't want to be that. I didn't want to be back and forth. I wanted to quit once and for the rest of my life. And so when I quit, it was when I felt I was ready. And so I didn't game again for another 4.5 years. But back up a bit. During those 2 months, I was going to program, heard about the 12 steps, got a book my first day, big book, got somebody agreed to be a temporary sponsor, and then came to a lot of roadblocks because as I was reading it, I was like, wow, this feels very foreign to me. It feels very Christian. I don't know. My God, don't touch my God. You can talk about personality. We can talk about stress. We can talk addiction. Don't talk to me about God or religion. That's sacred. You don't touch that. I'm like, okay, so you believe in God? Fine. Can you talk to your God about this stuff? He's like, sure. Well, do you? No. Do you talk to God at all? I game 23 hours a day. I don't pray, but I'm religious. Ah, yeah. Um, so I kind of eventually realized that I had to, and have to, nobody was telling me I had to, but program required me to really be fearless. But I found over time that I wasn't playing games anymore. And I was continuing to go to meetings. I was going to meetings, and I was sharing my struggles and triggers. I didn't do the steps. I went to meetings. In those 4 years, I got a job. I went to a different study program. I got married. I had a kid. I was not sober. I was game free, but I continued watching movies, continued watching TV, continued watching YouTube of the games. And I relapsed because I thought, I guess I was in a very non sober state. And I was just like, let me just play this one game. And I did. And it just sucked right in. And I was playing all the games I wanted to. And after a couple of months, my wife's basically about to leave. She's like, we can only stay together if you only play out of the house. And I said, listen, that's impossible. The only way I can not play in the house is if I stop altogether. And so I did stop. White knuckled it. So eventually, yeah, I quit. What I noticed is that in the big book, it says when we're not even halfway through, we start to see miracles. And so life started getting together, but I realized not that long ago, about 3 months ago, 4 months ago, my MO is to escape. I escape my mindset, get into the game, get into YouTube, get into anything but face what I have to do. And pretty recently I realized my life is unmanageable and I am powerless over my life. And I was able to surrender, and I actually started doing the steps. 3 months ago I started, but I started making headway 2 months ago. And it's just a real lesson for me, because I've had some real good days of actual serenity where I could actually, and I recently opened up that blue book, which I've had for 7 years, and started reading. I was like, wow, All the stuff people say in meetings, it's all written so concisely and so well in this book. I should read this sometime. And I never had read it. I'm starting to really um, reap from the program. And I'm so glad that I'm able to share that, because I was kind of dragging through watching YouTube, watching movies, life being very manageable, but saying, hey, at least I'm game free, which would make things worse if I was gaming. But now I have YouTube blocked on my phone, not watching TV, not watching movies, and I'm actually surrendering all the time to my higher power, offering myself on a daily basis to Him by the third step prayer. And it's really tremendous. I would not have believed it. And I probably was really, really full of my ego and self, um, and full of the need to escape. And I could not help myself. And I feel a freedom now that I never felt before. I hope some of this inspires you. My lesson took a long time to learn, but the program does work. And I've only found out very recently. But to newcomers, it's also very possible to get off games.